great variety of altitudes in Bhutan, farmers have the opportunity to grow a wide variety of crops. Among the more important cash crops grown in Bhutan are fruit crops such as various varieties of apples and mandarins, commonly referred to as oranges in Bhutan. Various types of vegetables, carrots, potatoes and cruciferous crops. This video will focus on IPM and management practices of two important cash crops in Bhutan, namely apples and oranges. The districts in which apples and oranges are cultivated are indicated. As can be seen, these fruit crops are grown in many parts of the country. The cultivation of fruit crops has the potential in promoting a more regional balanced economic development for the country as a whole. This graph shows the total production of apples in Bhutan and the export volume to Bangladesh from 1989 to 1992. Apple production has been increasing steadily for the last 4 years. Sales to Bangladesh also show a corresponding increase in demand over the same period. This increase in production, however, is not caused through improved productivity per tree, but rather by an increase in developing new orchards. This graph shows the relative share of export revenue of each of the fruit crops. The low export volume of apples to Bangladesh is due to the increasing competition from Indian apples, which are generally of better quality. Bhutanese apples can only compete through improving the marketing quality of its products. By adopting better management and IPM practices, the yields could be approximately doubled. Why is it important in the Bhutanese context to increase the yield per tree? Arable land is in short supply, and too much land encroachment might endanger the fragile ecology of the country. Given that the present yields are much below their potential capacity, what are the main reasons for having such low production of fruit crops in general? Quite often, farmers don't carry out the important management practices. Commonly observed negligences are the tethering of cattle to the trees, little or no basin preparation, improper or lack of pruning, inadequate application of manure and fertilizer. A second important cause for yield reduction is the presence of pests and diseases. Often farmers are not aware of them, nor do they control them in the right way. The most common pests and diseases of apple are woolly aphid, a small insect covered with wool-like material, can cause round galls on the bark of the trees and may retard growth, especially in young trees. Red spider mites principally occur in areas where farmers have applied frequent applications of pesticides. Scab develops as dark spots on the leaves and the fruits. In some cases, deep cracks appear on the fruit, thus significantly reducing the marketability. Having looked at the plant protection problems in apples, what are the most important pest and disease problems in oranges? Fruit drop is one of the major plant protection problems in orange. It can be caused by shield bugs in the fruit setting stage and fruit flies in the maturing stage. Trunk borer can occur in neglected orchards. The larva tunnels inside the tree. Multiple and or repeated attacks can kill the tree. Leaf miner can be found on orange leaves. The leaves become distorted due to the mining activity of the insect, which can seriously retard the growth of seedlings and young trees. Scales and other tiny insects suck juices from the leaves, twigs and fruits. Sooty mold, which covers the leaves and fruits, is an indirect effect of the tiny suckers. IPM stands for Integrated Pest Management. As mentioned earlier, the implementation of IPM in combination with improved management practices would significantly increase the production of fruit crops in the country. Now, what is the principal definition of IPM? Integrated pest management in short means the combined application of various pest and disease control methods, which will result in an optimum yield with the least environmental damage. The advantages of adopting IPM practices are manifold. It means a decrease in the use of pesticides, so lessening possible negative impacts on the environment and human health. Farmers will also be less dependent on external inputs like pesticides and sprayers. Furthermore, the technology is more applicable at the farmer's level. Overall, IPM represents a way towards developing a sustainable cropping system. Many countries, including Bhutan, have adopted IPM as a national policy in combating pests and diseases. IPM comprises of many components. The ones identified as the most applicable for Bhutan are the use of resistant varieties, mechanical control methods, cultural control, natural control enhancement, and the limited use of pesticides. For example, replacing the delicious apple varieties with more resistant ones would be a way of preventing apple scab. An example of mechanical control is the removal of pest-protecting ants from the orange tree. Here, the ant nest should be removed from the tree. Cultural control. Pruning of trees, besides increasing their productivity, will also create a less favorable microclimate for pest and disease development. The application of sticky glue as a ring band at the base of orange trees will prevent ants from entering the tree. The absence of ants in the tree will enhance the natural predation and parasitation of tiny suckers, so preventing the possible formation of sooty mold. If pesticides are applied in a judicious way, killing of natural enemies will be reduced. When applying pesticides, it is important to wear some form of protective clothing. After developing an IPM policy, what are the other steps which will ultimately lead to farmers adopting IPM practices? In other words, how should an IPM program be implemented? Let us look at the training of extension staff. Training of extension staff partly consists in developing technical abilities and participatory training skills. The technical skills considered to be most relevant for the extension agents were, among others, pruning, basin preparation, pest diseases recognition and control. Let us look at some of these skills being developed. Here we see the extension agents being taught the principles of pruning in a classroom situation. In addition to learning the principles of pruning, it is also important to understand the necessity for pruning. Later, this is brought into practice in the field. The branches which require pruning are identified. These should be removed after this year's harvesting time. Implementation of this management practice will lead to an optimum and stable harvest in the following years. Basin preparation combined with the application of both manure and chemical fertilizer ensures healthy growth and optimum yields. To maximize the benefits of this addition of nutrients, it is important to remove weeds around the trunk, thus preventing competition for the nutrients. Like pruning, this should take place every year after the harvest. Here, the extension agents are inspecting apple trees for the presence of pests and diseases and the general condition of the tree. The findings are recorded and analyzed later. These are discussed with the plenary group. The same exercise is also practiced for orange trees. After identification of the major pests and diseases, the appropriate control methods are employed. Here, for example, an extension agent is ring banding the trunk of an orange tree with sticky glue. This technique stops ants entering the tree. Here we see ants stuck at the glue line. This control method indirectly prevents the production of sooty mold. After the observation exercise, the extension agents begin to analyze the data gathered from the field exercises. This is usually done in subgroups, which ensures full participation of all the extension agents in this training element. Once the subgroups have finalized the initial discussions, it is necessary to prepare the findings for presentation to the plenary group. Here, the subgroups are preparing posters for later presentation. In this preparation stage, it is important that the findings are presented in a logical and structured manner. In addition, handwriting and graphics should be legible and should be visible to the audience. When the presentation material is completed, each subgroup gives a presentation of the observed problems, which must include with recommendations and solutions of the observed constraints. This exercise gives the extension agents a good opportunity to practice techniques in problem identification and to improve presentation skills. It is of vital importance that the extension agents, besides having the technical background, should also be able to impart their knowledge to the farmers. For this reason, during the training program, attention is paid to develop participatory training skills. Effective communication is an important skill of a trainer, both in terms of speech as well as in having the ability to listen.
Tomorrow will be a trainer. So to be a trainer is not an easy task. We have to be in out. A trainer needs a good body posture. Means answering for a training, not simply facing towards my blackboard. I cannot explain speaking towards my blackboard. I should have my body posture moving well in and out, looking to the individual eyes. This is the one. And number two component, what we have to understand is that the trainees, some trainees are quite literate, some trainees are not. That we have to understand the background of the trainee, whether he can speak English in Donka or in whatnot. So that is one of the components that we have to consider while training is given.
In order for the trainer to develop solutions to potential problems, listening to the farmers is an integral part in developing a workable solution. In summary, trainers' skills should incorporate the following. Communication. The two major components of communication are effective speech and the ability to listen. Target group awareness. The trainer should have a full understanding of the common problems and opportunities faced by the participants. Subject knowledge. It is important that a trainer should have a thorough knowledge on the topic to be covered during the program. Creativity. Finally, an important aspect is to be creative in presenting information to the participants. To have an effective farmers training, a thorough planning should be made beforehand. Here, the extension agents practice in identifying the main elements of planning a training program. Examples of linkages between the program plan elements are discussed with the extension agents. Once the linkages have been discussed, the next stage in the program development is the planning of the actual farmers training. This is done by the plenary group, which ensures that the training program follows a common direction. Setting objectives which are simple, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound, or in short, SMART objectives, is the main element of planning a training program. Here, the extension agents practice developing smart objectives for giving training situations. For each training subject, separate lesson plans should be made, stating the particular objectives, content, materials needed, and duration of the actual subject. Each particular subgroup has its own assignments to develop in the form of lesson plans for the farmers' training. The next step in this training approach is the training of farmers in the classroom as well as in the field. The program should consist of problem identification by the farmers themselves and improving their technical skills. Often, farmers are not aware of the problems occurring in their orchards. Before they can apply correctional methods, they need to understand what are the problems in their orchard, be it improper management practices or plant protection problems. Classroom discussion and visits in the fields help the farmers to identify improper management practices. Plant protection problems are being discussed here. A common method in the initial identification of the pest is the use of drawings. To complement the recognition process, farmers collect samples and specimens in the field. This leads to further questioning by the farmers. Technical skill development for the farmers, in addition to applying control methods for pests and diseases, also incorporates proper orchard development. The important skills are orchard establishment, basin preparation, plant protection, pruning, harvesting techniques, and nursery raising. In order to optimize the yields per given unit of land, proper layout planning for the development of new orchards is a prerequisite step. This is usually undertaken after clearing the selected site. Here, the farmers practice the triangular layout technique, using ropes and marking pegs. This technique is applicable for both apples and orange trees. Once the layout spacing is completed, the pits can then be dug to accommodate the seedlings. For new roots to establish quickly and for the fast growth of the tree, it is important to ensure that the pit has been excavated to the correct dimensions. While farmers practice pit digging techniques, they also use appropriate methods in controlling correct pit dimensions. Basin preparation consists of loosening the soil around the trunk, which should correspond with the diameter of the tree canopy. In the process of loosening the soil, the sods should be cleared from the base. When the base has been cleared of the weeds, Manure and fertilizer should be spread evenly in the basin. To prevent evaporation of the nutrients, the manure should be incorporated into the topsoil. The final step in basin preparation is the addition of mulch, which prevents soil erosion, water evaporation, and it also adds nutrients to the basin. Having learnt the advantages of regular pruning, it is important that farmers themselves practice the techniques. The extension agents are guiding the farmers in identification of which branches should be removed. The process of identification of the pests has already been completed. The farmers are now implementing a common control method against the trunk borer in an orange tree. A simple, non-chemical plant protection control method is being demonstrated to the farmers. Here, woolly aphids are being removed from an apple sapling. Traditional harvesting techniques tend to bruise the fruits, so lowering their marketability. The use of the improved picking bag can reduce bruising significantly. Although presently few farmers practice raising their own saplings, it can prove to be an important skill in the future. Farmers develop knowledge on the seed bed preparation and the sowing distances. Here, farmers are discussing transplantation timing of the seedlings to the second seed bed. As any training effort is lost without proper follow-up, also in this approach, attention should be paid to planning and implementation of follow-up activities.
Most common we have here is if you can market your product that time, you are very good price for this type of market. Now these are all luxury.
Refresher training for extension agents and farmers should be an integral part of an IPM program. The refresher training should be developed on a needs basis, aimed to bridge observed knowledge gaps. Field visits to farmers' orchards should take place throughout the year on a regular basis. Through visiting the farmers, the extension agents and resource persons have the opportunity to observe how the newly acquired knowledge is implemented. With the adoption of IPM and better management practices, fruit crop production in Bhutan will be more sustainable in terms of the environment, yield production and quality. Ultimately, this should lead to economic benefits to the country as a whole and more specifically to the farmer communities in Bhutan.